No, I actually have the other one. But that one I need to refresh. Let me double check this one here. Uh, da, 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 da. Oh no, actually, no. It gives me the commercial. That's not what I wanted. Mm, yep. No, no, no. Not yet. Not yet. Okay. Looks like we are live. We're live. We're live. We're live. It must be Friday because I'm saying the famous "What's up, everybody?" This is John from Coding Addict, and welcome to another Web Dev Power Hour live stream / podcast. And as always, I'm joined by one and only Mr. Paul Bratlovsky, the mastermind behind YouTube channel Coding After 30. Again, Paul's channel is Coding After 30. How are you, Paul? We're glad to
Hey,
see you
pretty good.
back.
I'm glad to be back. It's just been sick and all with the fam, but everybody's doing good. We're back to normal. Busy at work, all that good stuff. Can't complain for sure.
Awesome,
You know.
awesome. We're all happy to hear you, to see you, to hear that everybody is doing well, and of course, we're wishing all for everybody to get well and get back to normal, and hopefully, we all can just eventually
Yeah.
exit this nightmare called
Oh my
COVID.
God. Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah.
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 If you want to check out some cool content, be sure to visit Paul's channel, Coding
I gotta
After
post
30.
some new content.
Yeah, we need to talk about it.
Yeah. No.
Uh,
No. No. I'm gonna get back to it. Yeah.
and while you're there, be sure to smash that like button and help with an algorithm. As far as the weekly tips, I have kind of different one this time. I started kind of tinkering around with Redux toolkit, and I really like it. I
Yeah.
actually
It's
have
really
to
nice.
say, like, if you, again, I know that you have a little bit different setup as far as your like the state management, and actually that's something interesting that I want to like ask you. I know that you kind of we already covered it, but every time I kind of forget, and then I want to ask you one more time. But if you have like bigger application where at some point, let's say context is not, you know, cannot get the job done, actually Redux toolkit is awesome. Like I was playing around with it, and they have kind of fixed a lot of issues that was originally. And it really is kind of Redux with the batteries, where you know just you just
Yeah.
dump the values and you're good to go. You're kind of now one thing, the async is a little bit like once you get into async, it is I wouldn't say annoying, but it's getting more complex because they have that it's called query. I believe it's React. I mean Redux toolkit query, and yeah, that one can get once you start really setting up the responses and errors and all that, it can get a little bit more complex. But overall, I would say if you have the issue with, let's say, context API, and if you don't want to pick up some, I don't know, some other state management library, Redux Toolkit answers bunch of things and solves bunch of problems, and it's actually like I really enjoyed working with it, and most likely I'll make a big project with it. What about you? Any hot
Yeah. I
tips?
really. Yeah. Yeah. I really like. The Redux toolkit. I used it in one project, not like for work, but to mess around with it, and really like their implementation. And it does make things a little bit easier and straightforward for sure than just setting up Redux without it. So that's cool that you got to play with it. Um, yep, yep, yep. My tip, uh, so we talked about this, how we all like the styling of Tailwind, but we don't want to use it in our
Mm.
projects. So I found out this npm library which allows you to use Tailwind with style components. And so to me, I'm like, okay, now I have a good excuse to use Tailwind. Yes, yes.
And
The
does
one
that?
thing I
I'm sorry.
go ahead,
Does
go
that
ahead, go ahead.
fix all the like issues with like enormous amount of classes that
Yeah,
we talked about before?
Yeah, because you just stick them into your style components. And what I like about that, if you for any reason need to remove Tailwind, like you just do it in your style component because it's a wrapper basically, and all your styling goes through that. So it makes it nice and cleaner, in my opinion. So I really like it. The only big issue with the I discovered with the Tailwind styled component npm package is that you cannot do nested styling like Sass allows you to do. But to me, I'm like, you know what, that's fine. I could live with it.
So you cannot do like, let's say if I have a div with a class of hero, and inside of
Yeah,
it I have another, let's say hero
yeah,
center. I
yeah.
cannot select hero and then go inside the hero and then let's say something else.
Yeah. It's like you can't do that. I was kind of bummed a little bit, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? That you can't have your cake and eat it too, and not gain weight and everything else. You know what I mean? So I was just like, I'm happy that there's something, uh, but uh, yeah, you couldn't do that with the style components. But another thing that I've done before style components, you can't do the same thing with CSS modules, and CSS modules allows you to do, the Sass, the nested kind of CSS. So that's kind of cool. But I'm like really like this idea CSS and JavaScript in one place. Like, when doing like React applications, because I'm lazy and I'd like to move like my code and just have it work with the styling. So I know a lot of people don't like it, but for me, like, it makes it easier for me to reuse stuff.
I have one question, and I just want to add one thing where, as far as nested styling, initially when I realized that you can do that, I was like, oh, so excited. And then I was just like getting really lazy where I just left one class and then just nested, nested,
Yeah,
nested,
there you
nested.
go.
And then it came like few times it came back to bite me where what happens when you, let's say, set up the hover, you
Yeah.
also need to repeat that style. Otherwise, that one is more, what's the name? Jeez, in CSS where specificity,
Yeah,
that one is
specificity. Yeah,
more
more specific.
specific, and then
Yeah.
you also need to repeat that. So I kind of learned my lesson, and after that, tell me honestly, I haven't I have maybe used, if it's a really big style component, I maybe have used like one level nesting,
Yeah.
but not two.
Yeah.
I don't think even I remember, when it was two and nothing like that. And second, I just want to ask you, but let's say up and running with Tailwind, was it like basically, do you follow their pre-made components, or you go to the docs, then you take a look at, let's say that is a margin property that I add, and then you just kind of do it manually, or you look at what's the name of that Tailwind UI, I believe
Yeah.
the name is, where
Yeah.
it's pre-made. Which
Yeah. I
option
do
do you use?
both. I do both, and like I really like Tailwind, just how it looked and felt. I wanted to learn more about it, so I did. They have their professional UI package, UI kit. So I did purchase that a while ago. Um,
That's a good
so
investment, which I
yeah,
haven't which I haven't made.
it's not cheap. It's not cheap. Like I would really say, like if you're doing something that you wanted, like really pretty, very consistent, and you're gonna make money off it, like I would recommend. It's not a bad like UI toolkit. So at some point, I'm gonna make my paulbraslavsky.com website in Next.js. I just put it on the back burner because just have so much stuff to do. But that's gonna be with Tailwind using that their toolkit because it's really nice. I really like their styling. It's really clean, really professional.
No, that
So,
their stuff is amazing. Like the way
but
it looks, like
yeah,
I always said that kind of is like, to me, that is kind of a standard of how the web project should look like,
yeah, yeah,
and the like feel like it, and the whole like how precise everything is. No, and it's
yeah.
it's awesome.
I might
But
like, yeah, I might like make a video showing people what the paid version look like if some people curious, because that way I'll have a good excuse for spending $300
was it
because the
300 at that time?
yes,
Oh,
300 for their UI kit. Yeah, but I bought whatever their whole deluxe thing. So I was
uh,
like, you know what?
yeah, I don't.
But to my defense, I stopped buying 1,000 Udemy courses, so
So
like I
yeah,
had some money to burn,
but it is at some point, that's one thing that I have to say, that for everybody who's at the moment of buying all the Udemy courses, it does, like, as you progress, if you start building your own projects and everything, it gets less. The upside downside, let's say, of that one is then you start buying the some web developers course, which costs
Yeah,
200,
more
three
money.
hundred
Yeah,
dollars
yeah. I made a
but
mistake buying.
you
I'm
will
not gonna
stop.
say. So there's this guy. He's super famous in the React world. Everybody loves him. I'm like, whatever, nothing special. So like an idiot, I fell like towards this like fancy like website. Luckily, I only bought half of his course, uh, so it's only $300 because his full course is like almost 600. I was like, get the fuck out. Your courses I like way better, like just because like you present stuff in a much more clear way. And I realize is that when people build out like certain amount of cloud, they just want to have a way like, and they like, don't get me wrong, they do provide value, but just to put things in perspective, just because something costs more money doesn't mean that it's better, or vice versa. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
No,
I'm
this
not
is
gonna tell you to start charging more for your courses, but because that's messed up. But you have the like really good value for what you offer. It's insane. But I'm like, God damn it! How do I return
that's an
it?
interesting topic because this is also, and again, I'll repeat 20th time probably. I'm not saying this because I make courses myself, but yes, it is true. First of all, one thing that I want to say, just because some stuff is for free on YouTube, let's say I got the comment like when I released the Marin course, somebody like came to the channel and was like, uh your the course is okay, and kind of like the intro, like basically I showed the intro and then he left a comment. He's like, oh,
Yeah,
the project looks okay, but there's so much free stuff on YouTube. I would never
good for
pay
you.
like $10 or whatever. And I'm like, look, if you're going with this kind of theory, then there's no point to make any courses at all because there's
Yeah,
for every topic
for
there's
everything. Yeah, you could. There's so much free
tons of
resources.
videos. Yet let me give you like for example Redux toolkit, correct? So I went, now I started, I'm like, like I'm searching for stuff and of course some videos pop up, whatever, and so I just clicked on it. Like I want to, again, I have, to honestly, I don't watch that much YouTube, and when I looked at it, it's not, yeah, it is a free content, but just because something is for free doesn't
Yeah,
mean that
doesn't
it's
mean it's good.
great,
Yeah,
right? And you still end up looking for someone in you even willing to pay the money to be like, look, I
yeah,
just wanted somebody to kind of show me some gotchas, some edge cases or whatever, because I want to
yeah,
get there faster. Now I know I can go through the docs, I know I can do that, but the whole
yeah,
point why you're buying the course so you don't have to waste,
yeah.
not
Exactly.
even waste. Let's not use, not
It,
waste time, but you can get there faster, right?
what people have to understand, when I buy courses, I buy it because I don't want to waste my time searching for the stuff myself and then trying to uh, organize the stuff in some sort of like way that makes sense, and then know that from start to finish I'm going to have a good experience. And so like I'm a big believer in spending money on education, and that's why I buy courses. Speaking of which, I know you don't like to hear it, but like I have like thousand courses, so I'm slowly working through your Node course, and I really like your approach, how you walk people through from the very beginning, with this idea that some people might not even know how to start like a Node project. And so I like how you cover a lot of these bases that when I first started out, those are all the questions I had, but I would never ask because you would feel like they're like the most stupidest questions to ask somebody. Like how do you work with like npm package? How do you do this? Like blah blah blah. Like what's global versus non-global install? And it's kind of funny because I was again thinking to this idea. It's like, people always ask me, Paul, why don't you make a course? And I'm like, because there's so many good courses out there, and your Node course is a really good example of that because it's just so like I could tell you think through like everything, and I like how you organize everything in steps. So before getting into Express, you cover like Node, you talk about how it works under the hood, and like big picture. Obviously, like that could be a whole topic in itself, but like I really like that. So it's almost like uh, you don't leave any stone unturned. It's just like very methodical, really progressive. And by the time you get to the end, like I feel like people are gonna have like really good understanding. Which brings me to this like my other point is that you don't need 1,000 courses. If you buy like one or two, three good courses and you actually follow through with them, like you're gonna get the value out of it. And so like every time I like recommend courses, people like, man, this guy's always on his YouTube channel. I'm like, no, it's just really good courses. Like I still go through them. It's so it's kind of funny. But it's like that's why for me, I realized I'll never release a course unless I feel like I could do it better, because which I can't based on like the stuff that's out there. Like because I know myself, because I can't imagine the time that it takes to create a course and the investment, and it's a lot of hard work. Like so, anybody that makes a course, like man, my hat goes to them because that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time.
You're a good talker. You'll do fine.
I was gonna say though, like, how long does it take you to, like, what's the time commitment for like a course? Like, how long did it take you to make that Node
I
course
it's very hard to say overall. Like I can tell you that for me,
in
because
general?
I struggle with let's say again, this is why I like to tell okay, as I always I'm jumping over 10 different topics because I want to cover. So for me it takes, I would say, for every minute it takes me 4 times more. So
Yeah,
let's say if it's a 5-minute video, I mean, it depends. I mean, some videos are sure, like easier to make, some are
yeah,
longer, but in general, I would say a lot of times I have like, if the final video is 5 minutes, then most likely the original was at least eight. And
yeah,
then, so just to record it and to edit, it's not just eight
yeah,
minutes or
no,
whatever, fine, because you need to stop every time. And then
yeah.
there's cases where
It's
I'm
like
listening to
hours.
myself and I'm like, look, this doesn't make sense. Maybe there's a English grammar issue.
Yeah,
Maybe there's, I don't know, sometimes I have so if you ever listen to my course and you think that I farted, it's not because I farted, because I have airplanes flying over my house, and they literally sometimes, because I have this mic that picks up some sounds and some doesn't, and it's
yeah, yes. I was like,
always
what is that
this
sound?
this
What is that?
weirdest
It's an
thing.
airplane. It's
Yeah,
an
it's an
airplane. It's not
airplane,
too bad.
it's a car or whatever. Sometimes my daughter screams through it, right? So you don't
Yeah,
see this here because I don't have it, but usually there's a blanket on the door. There's also like
yeah,
some
yeah.
mats or
Down.
whatever,
Yeah,
so it's all covered, and to long story short, it takes at least 4 times. So let's say that MERN course, it was 20 hours, and okay, at the moment, like I have a little bit less time to recording, but took me, I would say 3 months something,
yeah, yeah.
so
It's
it
a big
wasn't,
commitment.
it's
It's a
by the
big
time you
commitment.
did it, and like there's issues that you work through. There's in a MERN course, I actually, if somebody can leave a comment who took the MERN course, what they think, whether here on Twitter, because on MERN course I did differently, where before each video I basically walk the person through what we're about to do, and I'm just interested in what, and that actually takes longer to set that up because I basically need to like write like a blog post or whatever. So I'm just curious, like how people feel about it and whatever. And we are totally already moved off the like
We're
the
getting there.
original.
But now let's get into our topic. Let's do
I don't
this.
know. There's something that we talked about before, and I already forgot. And so we talked about free stuff on YouTube. One thing I wanted to mention: if you take a look at videos, let's say for any topic, actually the first, I don't know, I would not even first nine or whatever, they're going to be a repetition of the docs. So again, just because something is free doesn't mean that it's 10 times better or whatnot. And the same goes for just because something is really expensive. I also have bought some expensive courses that are good, that get me to the point where where I want to be. And somewhere I'm like, I mean, I'm not gonna bash anybody, but I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not gonna buy any more of your courses and
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, so this week we have a kind of an interesting one, interesting main topic. So our main theme is working for a company versus working for yourself. And this is not only could be applied to software development. I mean, that could be pretty much for anything. We'll just talk about general themes. And when you're talking about working for yourself, again, this is not a video of what options you have. You have quite a few, right? So you can make videos, you can make courses, you can write blog posts, you can work as a consultant, you can be a freelancer. You again, there's you can start your own SaaS company. But this is not a video about that. We're just talking about like when you get the paycheck yourself and when somebody like gives you a paycheck. And essentially I have like I said, this is just going to be general points. I have freedom, security, and support. And the way it's going to go, like we'll just have one like let's say freedom, and then we'll just go back and forth. Like what is our experiences in general of like what is when you work for yourself and then when you work for the company. There's really no structure. And by the way, if you have some other point related to that in the chat, then just drop it and we'll try to cover this one. So we have here freedom, right? Like freedom for me means like when you work for yourself, you are your own boss, right? So there's downside, and we'll talk about the security and whatever, but you definitely don't have that where somebody's telling you what to do. Like you're the only one who makes those decisions. And yeah, there's you have all the freedom in the world. Now again, that comes with downsides where you need to make that structure yourself. Otherwise, if you won't do it, then you'll just be living in mom's basement. I mean, let's put like there's no other way how to put it. But as far as if you're a person who's maybe at this point or in general you're kind of tired of listening somebody telling you the orders or whatever, maybe you had some bad experiences, whatever. Again, this is not a video against working for the company, that I am just talking about general things. Then working for you for yourself is a good option because you won't have to, unless you maybe deal with like tons of clients or whatever, but even that is not kind of the same. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, for me, just I had like good and bad experience, and so I think working for yourself is very rewarding, and the freedom that comes with it is awesome. But there's a big price you pay if you want to consider yourself as being a successful entrepreneur working by yourself. So I don't think it's for everybody, and I kind of like been in places where I'm like, man, I wish I had a job which had a consistent paycheck. You know what I mean? And I know that's kind of jumping to security right away, but this price of being your own boss comes with this kind of constant thing. Like, am I going to be able to make enough money, or am I going to be able to have enough clients, whatever it is I'm doing, to be able to pay my bills consistently? So to me, it's more rewarding for sure, but it's, in my opinion, way harder to do that than it is to work for somebody else.
But what has, let's say, been your experience in a software industry? Because I think I mean I don't want to again speak to you, but for you, but I think for both of us, because we have worked outside, like in different industries where, let's say, treatment from the top is, I would say, three
Yeah,
times worse than any software company, at least
yeah,
in my experience that I have worked for. So even though working for yourself, it's always this, oh, I can do whatever I want. I can honestly say that when it comes to like coding as an industry, you have way better chance of having some decent boss that
yeah, for
it's
sure.
way
Yeah.
easier to work than other experiences that I had. What about
the
you?
the thing that I found out, like doing stuff like software engineering wise, or building websites, like if you're working for small clients, mom and pop shops that have a limited budget, they will tend to nickel and dime you for everything, like micromanage, or like constantly have you like correct one pixel to the left, one pixel to the right. Where I know a lot of people that work like business to business, and they get paid more, and there's like less of that going on. So I feel like if you're going to do it, you have to figure out what your niche is and find one where, in my opinion, you should be working with like businesses rather than small like mom and pop shops. But a lot of times it's like, to get started, you need to go through like the growing process. So I had a friend who did a lot of freelancing, and he's like, "Oh, I love it when I have the clients." But as he got older, he got sick and tired like chasing people for late payments or nickel and diming people. And over time, he literally came up with a system where, like he would talk to clients, and like, let's say on Skype, and he will visibly have a clock. And every time like people like go and start talking about those stuff, he's like, I'm on the clock, you're paying me like $100 an hour, so this is your time. To remind them that, like, look, like just because like I'm working with you doesn't mean that I'm working for free. And so he said the biggest and the hardest lesson he had to learn being self-employed is setting those boundaries where you don't let people take advantage of you. And eventually got sick and tired dealing with that. And for me, like, I did a little bit like WordPress development freelancing, and I quickly decided I don't want to deal with clients on that level. Like, for me, it was just like, um, it's too many hats at once. And that's why now I work in a contract role, because to me, it's like I kind of have the freedom, but at the same time, I'm working for somebody else, and I don't, they're responsible for getting the clients. They're responsible for signing my paycheck. But when you work for yourself, like, who signs your paycheck, John? You know what I mean? That's stressful. That's stressful. A lot of people don't talk about that,
Okay, but now we move like just to answer my question about the boss at your actual work. Not okay. We can talk about clients, but I'm just talking about like changing the industries, right?
Oh
Where
yeah,
have you noticed that in software still, like, because you work for now two companies, I believe,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Have you
One was
noticed?
terrible, and the other one is like really
So,
good.
but was it, let's say, first on management wise, would you compare it to something outside? Because in my experience, like experiences that I have had, the bosses, the management, whatever you want to call it, in different industries were actually way worse than coding. So every time I
Oh
hear
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah,
horror
yeah, hundred
stories,
percent, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, well, have you worked out? Do you like, because in here I haven't, like, I've never had, and like in a previous job, you literally could have a situation where somebody just screams at you. I've never
yeah,
encountered anything near like this kind of nonsense
yeah,
in
yeah.
let's say software.
My
So
first job, I was screaming nonstop. It was nonstop
was
screaming.
it
Like if
really?
it's like at me, right? So one day I come in and the guy starts yelling at me, literally
Oh well.
like loud, like I'm about to get into a fist fight, to a point where I was like, you know, I was doing like everything I can to like be like, no, no, no. I was like, first of all, like I'm agreeing with you. You're 100% right. We're not even arguing right now. And he's like still yelling. And then everybody else are like afraid to say anything because they know they're gonna get yelled at. But it's just like it was funny because the way I fixed it, I just started laughing at the guy, and I don't think he liked people laughing at him, so he stopped yelling at me. But he literally, I'm surprised we didn't have fistfights at work, and I don't
Oh
know how.
wow.
So, uh, like, because I'm not mentioning names, doesn't matter. Like, I know he had people sue him because of how he treated them, and so, like, for me, it's just funny because I think I worked at the only software company that is so atypical that most people will never work at a company like that. But when people ask me about my first experience, I think it's funny because it's the worst. But in
So
reality, like everybody I talked to, all the interviews I went on, they were very pleasant. And most companies, like, so after my first job, I started asking one of the questions I'll ask at the interview: what is your onboarding process? And what do you do? Do you have a support system in place to help new developers? And so uh, that will dictate to me like how nice a company is. And every company that I interviewed in the past, um, they all had a very structured way to onboard a developer in a way where their job is to get you up and running as smoothly as possible so you could be productive, which was kind of nice. And I'm like, I wish I had it in my first job. So in terms of like generally, I think in development, you're probably gonna like definitely have a nicer experience for sure.
mm. No, I'm just judging also that by let's say my wife works in a really good hospital and everything, and the way you even see how things are being interacted, right? We always talk about it at home, how like, because the jobs, let's say, that we started before schools and everything, I mean, that was totally, when you work at the bar or something, that's totally different than when you work for like like normally managed company. Let's put it this way. I think I'm gonna add one more at the end, but now let's talk about the security. So when it comes to security, there is this thing where, I mean, working for a company, I don't know how to put it maybe properly, but it does feel like more secure from one sense, right? Because you're getting that paycheck at the end of the month or whatever, and that's definitely the case. But there's also a little bit of side note where, for example, when COVID started, there
Yeah,
were
it's just like go
like
home.
like a lot of layoffs. So I'm not, and again, this is not against me saying anything about working for a company. Like, don't misunderstand. This is not what I'm saying. We're just looking from different perspectives. And what I'm saying, yeah, from one part, when you work for yourself, you are in charge of that. Like, if you don't do the work, don't expect to get a check in the mail. But you're also, your own failures control your own
Yeah,
destiny. So like a lot of times it seems like, okay, I'm working for this company, and I'm just, I go to the work, I get the paycheck, whatever. But with all that said, you don't know. Maybe that company tomorrow goes out of work. Now, are you gonna struggle and never find a work? No. I mean, of course you can go to another company. So this is just kind of give you that little like side note where it's not, yeah, when you work for yourself, you definitely, you are in charge. And if you make mistakes, then you won't get paid. But I wouldn't also
yeah,
like say 100% just by working for somebody that it's 100% times more
yeah.
secure. like any
Yeah, I'm
company can
gonna
go.
be the devil's advocate. And before I preface this, my goal, by the way, for everybody that knows, is to be self-employed. I've worked not in software engineering, but my past life, I was self-employed for the longest time. So for me, it's the what I strive to do right now. But with that being said, playing a little devil's advocate, for
Yeah,
instance,
that's
if
why
you
we
work
have
at
a
a company,
conversation.
yeah, if you work for a company, like I was actually thinking to my boss, like, because he's like, oh, we have to make sure that blah, this happens and that happens. I'm like, wow, like so much stress that he deals on every day, making sure that what they're building has a potential future. And that's all risk on them because as he's talking to me, I'm like, I can just leave and go somewhere else. You know what I mean? And that's the one benefit of working at a company is that, you know, obviously you don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck. You got to save your money. So if you do decide to live or leave, I mean, you're not like struggling. But the point is, like, you could put in your 2 weeks. And then if you're a good software engineer, there are other opportunities there. So you're not taking a risk of the business. So, like my last company I worked for, I left earlier, but they ended up laying people off, because the guy was losing clients. And to your point, no job is secure. But from the standpoint, if you become a good software engineer, I think that in itself will provide you security,
Definitely.
regardless if you work for yourself or you work for a company. But like I was going to say, like you can't pack up and leave, John. It's like you can't. What are you gonna do? Who's gonna? No, you can't. So, but the point is though, like I feel the one thing that I just to say, I think like either choice you make, working for somebody or being self-employed, they're both good choices. The only thing I would say is that I find people who get into software engineering and they're like really, really early on and they're not even good enough to get hired at the regular company. They start thinking that freelancing or being self-employed will be their solution. And I think that's wrong attitude. Like I feel like to be self-employed, you have to have some sort of skill that you are legitimately good at and you're able to execute in a way that people will pay you money for. You can't use like freelancing as a way to learn on the go. Like, I don't think, like, I mean, you can, but you're going to be not making any income. Like, you definitely need to be good at your craft. Like, I used to teach Brazilian jiu-jitsu and I had people pay me $150 an hour per class. Why did they pay me that much money? Because I built up a book of clientele that I could consistently get, and I was really, really good at what I did. And so to me, it made sense for them to invest $150 an hour with me because they knew what they were getting at, and I had a reputation, and they knew that I was good at teaching and explaining things, and I could actually demonstrate that. So for them, there was no risk of paying me that money. So you need to build that type of reputation before you could be successful. And I think that's the hardest part. Like I think once you make it and you have like a functioning business, working for yourself, it's amazing. But like people that don't have a skill that's defined or a service that they're able to provide at a high level, which people will pay money with confidence, then it's going to be really hard, because how are you going to prove yourself to somebody? And if you don't have that kind of thought out, or you try to kind of bite off more than you could chew, you're going to fail because you might under deliver and you're going to get a bad reputation that's going to be like really hard to recover from. So I think working for yourself is amazing. And I think people should do it, but people should definitely do it the smart way, know and understand their business first, and have like kind of like all that stuff planned out before jumping in. It's not like, oh, because I could buy a domain name, I'm now like self-employed. You know what I mean? It's like,
No, this is 100%. I agree with like in a perfect world, I would also say that if you're just going for freelancing because I don't know, you don't feel like working for somebody, or you think that it's I don't know, you'll just
hold on.
have.
Oh, go ahead. I just saw a comment I wanted to answer uh, completely randomly. Sorry.
If you, I would suggest going for the company for multiple reasons. Like Paul said, first of all, you will get better faster than on your own.
Oh
It's
yeah.
definitely the case because you'll be surrounded by people who are like hopefully really good, and they'll just you'll pick up stuff faster. Second, you'll see how the industry works, what you need to do. right? It's one thing to talk about like freelancing, and it's totally different once you already see how the projects are made, right? When you have some kind of understanding, like, look, this is what it takes for me to build that site to do this, and then once you're in there, then you can see your options for going and working for yourself. Then you maybe see, okay, maybe I can do consulting, maybe I can do this, maybe you know what, the company that I work for, they have some kind of app, but you know what, I can make maybe a better one that could be a SaaS one, and I can try that one out. Again, you have variations. If you just, not knowing anything, and you just randomly start working for yourself, can you do it? I mean, you can do anything technically, but I don't think it's the best route. So again, let me stress for fifth time probably here, it's not this is just looking at various things, what decisions you need to make. But I personally have, I would say only the best things to say when working for the company. So yeah, that I think should cover that. And then last one, we have support, where when you work for your own, I think this is one of the biggest things actually why we even, for example, have these live streams and everything, because you don't have that. You don't, like, when you work for your own, that's it. You're maybe you communicate here and there, but you don't talk to people that much. I mean, as far as, unless you work with together with somebody, maybe
Yeah.
a founder together. In general, you're working on your own, and there's nobody to ask you like, hey, this, how do I do this, and how do I do that, and whatever. You pretty much need to do everything yourself. You need to find everything yourself, and it does get, I would say, without being overly dramatic, just lonely, right? So when you're just like, okay, I'm on my own here doing my own thing, and that's why it's good to have like the live stream or podcast meetup that we have, where we just talk about some different things, and then you know week goes by, and then again we come up with something else. So yeah, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's like the same support unless you have like people that, because you plan the business that you're going into and you have some role models, or like somebody else did it that you can, like, for instance, like, since I know you and I know you've done courses, let's say if I wanted to do the same thing, I would definitely pick your brain and have someone to kind of bounce ideas. But if you don't have a person like that, yeah, you don't have support, because it's literally trial by fire, where you have to figure out what works and what doesn't. You know what I mean? And that's the hardest thing if you're self-employed, because when something bad happens, there's nobody else to help you except you. You know what I mean? And that's one thing that's hard. And for me, this is why I kind of like the fact that I found a good contract role, is because it's like the best of both worlds. Like, I'm technically not working for myself, but I have enough freedom that I don't have my daily routine like if I were working for somebody else. And so it's kind of like in between. And I think if somebody wanted to kind of feel what it's like, I would say, like, and before jumping into being self-employed yourself, do a contract role and see if you could deliver based on the requirements that they give you. Because ultimately, when you work in a contract role, you're still working on a product that some clients somewhere needs. Try to understand how that process works, and once you get more comfortable, you could kind of try it on your own. But the cool thing, like I was going to say, a moot point with being a software engineer, if you develop the skill and you're good enough, you could start working somewhere. Then you could do self-employed gigs part-time, see how you like it, see if you pick up steams, and if it doesn't work out, like, you could always go back to having a job or doing a like a contract role, what have you. And I feel like that's one amazing thing, is that you do have that flexibility, where in other professions it's kind of hard to do. So I
Oh no,
think,
we could do it definitely, like the entire episode on how the software industry in general is a very good place to be in, and because of the flexibility that you get from, like you said, like just working for a company, working for yourself, pretty much you have options. Let's put it
yeah.
this way. Now, one thing that, like, the last thing that I kind of want to add, and this is general, this is whether you work for yourself, whether you work for a company, whether you're, I don't know what other options you have, but I read a few days ago uh, in the one of the newsletters that I have subscribed, how in a company, basically, either the person left or they fired somebody, and then the manager asked uh, to to work indefinitely without a pay, weekends and nights, right? And I just want to say again, whether you're working for yourself, this is not against companies or whatever. I think that was one of my biggest things that, again, not overly dramatic, but I regret about when in my 20s and early 30s, where I dedicated way more time and effort to the company or work in general, where I think it should be. I'm a big fan of working hard, but
Yeah,
this hustle culture there, where you have to work 60 hours or you're lazy. I totally disagree with that because, like, you are not born to work. Like, work
yeah,
is awesome. I enjoy my work. Again, I mostly need to stop myself from working more than instead of like pushing myself. I like what I'm doing, but at the same time, you do need to think about, like, what is really the most important thing in your life. Is it
yeah,
really just to work, just to put on those 60 hours? And especially, like, if you're doing that for that company, at some point I had situations where, again, they still can let you go, and
yeah.
then
Of
all
course,
of that was
of course.
wasted and all that. So that's kind
Yeah,
of the like last thing that I want to, not to be a
yeah.
downer, but
No, no, no. Like one thing I would was gonna say, the older you are, like just like I switched careers like way late, like in my late, like practically 40 years old to software engineering. So there's this like it's not that I wanted to do like hustle culture and work a lot of hours. It's just I felt like I needed to, maybe not like I'd still work 40 hours, but then I would spend additional 20 hours studying, like so it'd be like 60-hour weeks or 80-hour weeks sometimes. And the reason I did it is because I was like, I am 39 years old. How am I going to be relevant with other younger developers? So I have to constantly kind of put the most time that I can towards my studies. And I did it because I wanted to, within like a year and a half, like get as far as I can as quickly as possible. But it's not something I intend to do forever, in terms of like kind of like my experience working. So even now, like I spent a lot of time, self study at home outside of my work. And when it comes to work, um, like no company is going to take care of your family. No company is ever going to like take your kids to school. So if you're working more than like 40 hours for them, or you're working for free on the weekends, or you're working on the weekends because they told you to work, and you're sacrificing your life, even though you might be getting a bigger paycheck, to me, like I feel, um, like obviously everybody's situation is different. Like if you have, like, say you're a single parent and you have like a bunch of kids and they go to school and you have no choice but to work 70 hours a week, that's different. But if you have a choice and like, I would say work 40 hours at your job, and if you want to do something extra, do something that is not for your work but for yourself. Like take an extra course, invest in some education, like bring your knowledge up so you could then use your work experience plus what you learn on your own at home and try to get a higher paying job. And so like there's this kid I was listening to, and I was frustrated because he was younger than I was. He said, like if you work for a company, just do your 40 hours and that's it. Don't try to go extra. And I was like, man, he's so young, but he understands what his priority are. And like I think like Jim Rohn, Rohn, whatever. I keep forgetting his last name. One of these positive talking guys, really famous back in the day. He says, work harder on yourself than you do at your job, meaning that take care of yourself first, and put in your time in the priorities that matter. So for me, I don't like hustle culture where you work for somebody else and give up your literally your health, your weekends for somebody else's benefit. But I am a believer in, okay, just do your regular 40 hours. But when you get home, if you, let's say, find yourself playing too many video games, watch too much Netflix, take an hour a day. You know what I mean? And apply to learning something that could help you um, climb the ladder at your job or get a new job much quicker. Like one thing I started doing, like every day I read for like half an hour something pertaining to, like, because I'm using Strappy all the time, like with Strappy and React. And because of that, I've been learning more and more and more, and I'm kind of becoming the expert at my job. I mean, I'm the only person that's working on it, but I have a story for the we hire a bunch of people. But anyway, but I want to make sure that I'm the guy. And this is funny because there's Engine Boy says he had a like funny comment which because I've been like reading so much about Strappy, and I don't remember where he put his comment, but it's like along the lines like, I like doing backend development because there's certain things you can't do on Strappy. I'm like paraphrasing, and I'm like, no, you could do what like, yeah, he says, no, I'd like to build backend, and Strappy cannot replace backend completely. And I'm like, Strappy can replace whatever you want. The stuff I've been doing with Strappy, it
For
would blow
Paul,
your mind. It would blow your mind. It would blow your mind. You'll be like, at this point, you might as well just build something from scratch. I'm like, no, because it's the power of Strap. This is one thing that I hate to like talk about Strappy so much, but it just blows my mind because I've been working on it on like much more deeper level, that people that hear about Strappy, they still don't understand the level of customization you could do with Strappy. It just, you could pretty much do anything. It's pretty insane. You know, not to plug Strappy in or anything. It's the best. You know. So.
do you know whether they have updated finally the Gatsby source plugin?
Probably
That
not.
is what
But
is
here's the
bugging
thing
me.
for you guys though. But this is how customizable Strappy is. And this is where, to your point, how you're going to say, Paul, you're such a good talker, is that it's open source. You could literally go and take a look at the previous plugin that they made, and you could yourself rewrite it and share it with the community. There's like, I'm not saying you should, but I'm saying there's nothing stopping you from being able to go and do that. Like for instance, at my job, you're working on some file stuff. We're working with Google Cloud, and they have their own implementation of Google Cloud, but it's not enough what we need. And so there's nothing stopping us making our own custom solution, right? And just writing it the way we want it to work and do all the things that we want. And that's the beauty with Strappy. If you have a limited team and you're trying to make sure that you're able to deliver, um, Strappy will get you started. Like, so for instance, if you have like, one person predominantly working on it, it's much easier to get started than if you're trying to build everything from scratch, because there's so much good stuff implemented. Anyway, I'm going to stop because I could talk about Strappy for hours.
No, to your
It's good.
last point, you definitely that yeah, there's that's a major difference whether again you're investing in yourself, whether you're again just wasting your time watching movies, or you're actually putting the work to better yourself. Again, that could be anything. That definitely coding, because for me, I just like coding. I'm interested in all that, like learning that new syntax, or I wouldn't say new framework. I'm trying to kind of stay off those shiny things, but in general, the maybe some new ideas, maybe maybe there's some better option or whatever. So all of that is cool, but again, I'm more like my kind of point was that just that was one of the biggest regrets that I had when you literally like spend so much time, and then at the end of the day, it's not appreciated, and you
Yeah.
still like feel like, look, I actually like kind of I spend my time on that where I could have been doing better things and maybe bettering myself, and maybe finding a different job that doesn't require that. That's where I was kind of going.
Yeah. No, one thing that I was going to say, because we hired like newer people who like technically starting out like more junior to me, but you got to understand, like, people that are looking to get jobs as developers, there's a lot of competition, and you can't just assume like just because you learn a little bit that that's enough for you to stay relevant at my job. Like the guy that we just recently hired, he's a very good, like, smart guy, and like he knows more about testing than I do. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of crazy to think about it, like, because I'm constantly like, man, I don't know enough. I don't know enough. I got to keep kind of learning and sharpening my sword, making sure that I stay relevant. And then I see these junior guys coming in. I'm like, how the hell do you even know this? And the fact is, like, I'm not saying you should compare yourself to others, but understand that software engineering is good. And in terms of like, you could get your education anywhere as long as you know how to code, you could get hired, but understand the competition is still there. And there's still like a lot of other people like yourself who are competing for the same position. And so you can't kind of like be lazy. You kind of constantly have to be proactive. And that's one of the reasons like I love software engineering, because you're constantly learning new things. So if you're constantly putting in the time, you're always going to stay relevant in what you have to do, you know? Um,
No, that's
Yeah,
for
so
sure. Yeah, no, like this is one of those fields where just because you learned something 10 years ago doesn't mean that you can next 40 you can just ride with that knowledge. You will have
yeah,
to constantly
yeah.
learn the new stuff, whatever is coming out, and you'll have to keep up to date. Otherwise, it's very hard to stay in the industry. Paul, have
There's
you
a fu-
ever seen anybody get fired?
so this is not funny, but I was at Best Buy, was going to buy like something, and I literally heard some manager fire somebody at Best Buy, and then that guy that got fired was not happy, and he yelled so loud across the whole store. So that was my experience from seeing someone get fired. But in terms of companies that I worked for, never like seen anybody get fired unless they somehow got past the interview and then like on the fifth day they realized that this guy doesn't know anything. You know what I mean? But anybody who legitimately got the job and who legitimately put in the effort, I've never like seen anybody get fired. But we had one guy at my past job who thought he was like this fancy developer because his ego was like really high. He brought his own keyboard, he brought his own chair to the office. And then when he looked at the code base, he realized he was way over his head and he left like literally that same day. My boss didn't even have time to fire him. He just like left. And the boss is like, oh, I was going to fire him, but he was already gone. Like, you know, and it was funny because he forgot that he brought his keyboard and his chair. And so he kind of had to come down when
Oh, that's
would
so
like do the
bad.
like the walk of shame, and his chair is pretty big, so it's not like you could kind of like secretly
Sneak it
grab it. So you
out.
have to grab his chair, then have to come back for his keyboard, and everybody's trying to pretend like we don't notice
Yeah,
him,
and then we're
and everybody's
professional.
just trying to like be professional about it. But yeah, yeah,
Uh,
it's hard. But I talked to like because I'm always in fear of getting fired, and I talked to my friend who's like above me, and he said normally at companies where you work, like unless you're trying to get yourself fired, you know, they're going to talk to you first. They're gonna like ask you like what difficulty are you having, like what's going on here. Are you either, you know, there's something like missing, so they'll help you to figure it out to make sure, you know, like they're not just gonna like straight up fire you. They're gonna give you like a couple of chances to kind of get yourself figured out. But um, you know, I've never heard like anybody got fired. Like the two people that I talked to who recently got hired, they literally felt like I did. You know, oh, I'm gonna get fired. I'm gonna get fired. And this has been like 6 months later. They're still working. They all learn a ton. And so, unless you like try to get fired, I think like it's pretty forgiving. Uh, Unless you lied and you somehow got a job and you have no idea what you're doing, then
unless
it's
you
different.
applied for PHP job and you don't know any PHP,
Yeah, right, exactly. You apply to PHP job, but you don't know any PHP. I had a
then
friend. He's so funny. He went and applied to a bunch of tech jobs, and I'm like, dude, you are a chemist. He's like, yeah, but I just wanted to change careers. I'm like, have you done any coding? I'm like, no. Have you done? And so somehow got to an interview, and the guy's like asking him all these questions, and my friend like doesn't have an answer. He doesn't know what the SQL is, and then the interview finally goes to him like it seems that you don't know any of the things that I'm talking about. Like, why did you apply, you know, to this job? And my friend literally responded with, well, I figured if you hire me and I start getting paid, I will be motivated to learn those things that you're asking me about. I was
that's
like,
a good approach.
only you, only you. So to say the least, he still hasn't got a job as a software engineer yet, but I think his strategy is flawed. You know, I think that could be the problem.
Yeah, but if he's persistent, I bet you
I bet
he's
he's gonna get a
on.
job. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
some way,
Somebody somewhere.
somehow, like, and this is one of those things again we can go back to. But this, if like, I think in many areas in life, if you're just if you're not taking no for an answer, you're actually way better suited than somebody who's really talented or whatever, because you're just gonna keep coming back and again,
Yeah,
I'm not saying
that's
this is the
that's why
best.
we have this podcast, by the way, because we
Yeah,
just,
as I say, no, this is not probably the best podcast, but at least we're consistent.
exactly. But hey, that's all that matters. So I talked to my boss. I had lunch with him today, and he literally like said to me, "He's like, well, one of the reasons, you know, I hired you is because like as somebody said, attitude is crucial, or some level of professionalism, whatever is important, is because he's like, you might not be the fastest developer, and sometimes he literally said to you, certain things take you a long time to figure out. But he says your ability to work on a team, to listen, to communicate, and to ask good questions, all in all, make you a more valuable employee than somebody who doesn't have those skills but could be like the best possible developer but just doesn't know how to work on a team. And to me, like, it's always weird to hear that, because I always thought coding is all you need, but it's like, no, like, if there's all these other things you could bring to the table, like, being responsible, show up to work. Believe it or not, there's so many people that like show up late all the time. That's just, or like stupid stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of funny. So if you learn, you know, programming, and then you're also responsible and you practice like how to ask good questions and communication, all that plays in, and you might get hired over somebody who might be more qualified than you, but might not be a good team player, so that's good to keep in mind.
So we have one question, John. When you will use Redux in your Udemy courses? So the plan is to add a, at least that's what I'm thinking right now. Again, a lot of this depends on React update. So what's happening? Like, so I'm waiting. It's supposed to be January, February, whatever. But the idea is that I will add a basically bigger e-commerce for all three of them, for Mern, for React course, as well as Node course. So basically backend is going to be Node course, Mern is going to have both, and then the React is also going to have the React, just the front end, and that one is going to be done most likely. That's why I'm like working right now with that Redux toolkit, and that's going to be done in Redux toolkit. As far as this is, unless something changes, that's at least the plan right now. And I think we got super chat from Engine Boy, so that he's your follower for sure. Donating. Thank you very much for the donation. I think maybe there was a question as well.
He says, $1 million question: how we write two different programming languages in a single file. I would say, how do
That
you do it
was
with
money
three?
wasted.
Yeah, I would say, how do you do it with three programming languages? I mean, like, that's it's like a uh, it's it's funny. Uh,
Let's just let's just
it's like, why
thank you for
why would you do that?
donation,
Yeah,
but
no,
that was
like,
that
it's like a
was
big, like, if I was a troll, that's what I would write. You know what I mean? But no, I like Engine Boy. He's a good kid. But it's funny though. It is. I'm trying to figure out how to use one programming language to write.
By the way, I wanna do a shout out to I don't want, I know that I'm gonna butcher his name, but personally, basically the person who just asked, it is spelled Fakhre, and I want to say no, I don't want to say anyway, uh, because I'm definitely gonna butcher. But what he shared, he basically redid the e-commerce project from the current React course,
Yeah.
and I really like his approach because he really hit nails on everything that I've been kind of annoyingly repeating time and time again. Things that basically we have talked about in this podcast over and over and over again. Where essentially he took the e-commerce and he made it into food kind of ordering delivery one. So
Yeah.
the project structure is there, but he totally made it his own. Totally
Yeah.
looked different. He added some functionalities and it does that for me is that's why you take a course, right? So you take that project and instead of just copying one to one, which you
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
it your own, and that's really like huge. I was real like a really nice looking project, and he added tons of features. So really, really, really great result. Really liked it. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, we're like 1 hour in, and I don't really see any questions. I think today we're like doing pretty well as
It
far as
was
questions. Do you see
I'm
anything?
just gonna pick, just because I think it's funny, because I know how much I love Tailwind. Uh, so, hi John, what do you think about using Tailwind CSS with React?
Uh, I've made it pretty clear that if I were to use a framework, I definitely would use Tailwind for simple reason that quality of work of the founders behind it speaks for itself. Like
Yeah,
I'm gonna go back to the same how Paul always advertises Strappy. For me, it's refactoring UI or refactor
yeah,
UI. I'm sorry if
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah, yeah,
refactor UI. I think the best ever investment you'll make in your life, as far as if you want to make uh, clean modern designs. And the same people who made that book, like the best
the behind
investment ever,
Tailwind. Yeah,
made a Tailwind. And I would definitely use it if I were to use a framework for sure. And just like Paul said, you come up with solutions. So he found the NBN package that deals with some of the issues that it has. But I definitely would use it. Now, the reason why I don't use it, because if I'm going to start typing classes in one of my projects, let's say React course or Mern course, I mean, people will just drop the course. I tried initially with Bootstrap, and I can say that the first iteration of React course was done with Bootstrap, and people were not particularly happy. And I kind of get it, because they were like, look,
yeah,
it becomes like a Bootstrap course at the end of the day.
yeah,
And also, the second thing is, if you make a course like that, the moment the library changes, all your course content is obsolete in some shape or form. If, let's say, there's some breaking changes or whatever.
yeah.
So
I
therefore,
wanna.
sorry.
Oh no,
So for
go
for
ahead.
for me, therefore, I will stick to writing CSS and then just showing how I made it and whatever. But if I were to use a framework, definitely it would be Tailwind or Bootstrap.
Yeah, yeah, same. I like Bootstrap and I like Tailwind. Those are my two to go to. And I wanted to add to Engine Boy made a bunch of smiley faces. The answers, we can write PHP plus JavaScript as a single file. And I was going to be that answers to obvious and to easy. Uh, and that's probably something we used to do in like 1982, right? PHP with JavaScript together. Who did people use PHP still? Really? No, I'm just kidding. I think Engine Boy got a job as a PHP developer, talking about someone who got hired to do PHP but didn't really know PHP yet. Because I know a lot of his projects before were like Node and React related, but I think he got hired working as a PHP developer, and he was able to, based on his previous experience, pick up PHP fairly quickly. So that's pretty amazing. And correct me if I'm wrong, Engine Boy. But yeah, no. The funny thing is, like, I keep talking to people like, "What's the best programming language to learn?" And like, it's such a moot point when people ask that question, because like you could argue that to whatever you want, and like the short answer is the one that people pay you money for to do, right? So if you're getting paid as a PHP developer and making money, that's the best language for you to learn. Like if I'm doing, Node and JavaScript right now because I'm getting paid for it, that's the best language to learn. Like like if someone told me I'll pay you like $150,000, but you have to code in C#, I'll be like, okay, let's do it.
It looks
So
like you're
it's so
mistaken,
funny.
Paul. He got job as React developer.
I am so proud of you, Engine Boy. I knew it, because why would you want to code in? No, I'm kidding. PHP is a good language. I'm just kidding. I like PHP. No, awesome. React JS, React JS all the way.
We have one for you, Paul. You'll like this one. This is motivational forward slash career. Paul, just wanted to say I too was a freelance martial artist. Now I'm 40 and I'm looking for my first tech job. Hope to follow in your footsteps. Yes, Kevin, you should follow
You can
Paul's
do it.
channel, and he does bunch of cool stuff. Tuesdays, correct me if I'm wrong. So Tuesdays is where, well, again, now you had
I'm gonna come
COVID
back to it. I'm
situation,
gonna
yeah,
come
but
back to it.
usually
Yeah,
that's on Tuesdays he builds the project, so that's
yeah. I'm
one
gonna
thing that you can
get.
follow. And
Yeah, I'm
then
gonna get back to it. I
Saturdays,
stopped doing Saturday for a little bit because I'm doing this stream with you on uh, today's Friday, on Friday. So I because we had this conversation before. You're like, Paul, like, we do these videos. You have like a library of them. Why can't you just cut them and post them?
well, this
And
was
so I
by the way,
decided, hold on, wait, wait,
no,
wait,
no,
wait, wait, John,
no, no,
wait,
no.
wait. And
I
so I
I need to
decided
add
that
to
I
this.
need dedicated time to actually do not live content, but do
If you
some.
see me, I'm shaking my head, but go on, go on, go on.
No, I'm saying for me, not you, but for me, I decided that I need dedicated time to schedule outside of work to get those videos done, which will only take me like 10 minutes because they're practically done.
Okay,
5 minutes,
so let
practically
me
done.
add everything. Let me touch all the points. First of all, Kevin, I hope that Paul does do the Saturdays, because Saturdays is where I was going with this. Saturdays is mostly he's just kind of talking about everything as far as motivational and getting the job. So let's say Tuesday is going to be very specific as far as project, but
Yeah.
he still implements that. But then Saturdays is the stuff where you, again, that's
I
I would say what is that, a soft skills or whatever,
Yeah,
wherever
soft
the, yeah.
skills, how to like
And I
define
really
and
like those ones because Paul really can talk for hours and hours, and he seems to be
it just
very.
wants me to get tired out with my motivational speeches before I come on to his
No, actually,
channel.
that's why
I'm
you're
just
here,
kidding. I'm
because
kidding. I'm
I
kidding.
cannot put
I'm
two
kidding.
sentences together. Now, all the time, Paul keeps saying that. I keep telling him like he needs to do something with YouTube. Let me be very clear. So, if you know basically how it works, when you make like bunch of content, it's one of the advices that they give you. Look, split it up in small contents and just post it. And
Yeah, yeah,
honestly,
yeah, yeah. It makes sense,
originally
and it's smart. It's smart. I'm not
originally
arguing with you.
this
I
live
agree with you
this
1000%.
live stream was done because we made a video on tips, and I was like, look, like we did decent tips and it came out really
Oh, no,
well
really good.
because
Yeah,
yeah,
really good. Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
were
Really good
talking
stuff.
like right now back and forth. And I was like, look, but I came unprepared basically, and I was like, why don't we re-record those tips where I can prepare some points or whatever, and I think it's going to be better result. And the idea was that Paul just it's a cutout thing that he didn't he just needs to post. I
So
don't.
here's the funny thing. Yeah, here's the funny thing. Like I enjoy our live streams so much that like I completely like whatever like I'm just like every Friday like I'm like man I'm gonna chat with John. This is the best. Like everything else I don't even care about. But two funny things. But when my fiance goes back to Thailand, I'll have a little bit more time, so I'll bring back the Saturday stream. Just right now, time wise, and we're under crunch time at work, and there's other stuff going on too that I'm trying to do at the same time for work. So it's been really, really difficult with me. But I'll bring back the Saturday stream at some point. And there was like something else I was going to say. I, I forgot. Somebody says, "Where's your martial arts stream?" Yeah, unfortunately, I don't do those anymore. You
But
could see BJJ and Friends. Just Google BJJ and
no,
Friends.
but
You'll
I
find
really
some.
that channel actually. I'm really surprised that it didn't take off because you could tell that first of all that there was a. And by the way, that's if you can hear baby, that's my daughter right now. I think my wife is giving the bath, so that's why she's probably
Nice.
like making a lot of noise. She's very excited. Uh, what I was saying, that you could see definitely commitment from Paul,
You know,
as
like
far as that channel.
yeah, and I think that channel definitely had potential. But here's the thing: like when I decided that I'm going to switch to software engineering, I literally said I cannot devote time to something that is not on the same path. So I was like, yeah, I like doing YouTube, but I can't do programming, but then also have a YouTube channel like about jujitsu. And that's the reason I stopped. So like I'm doing YouTube, and I have a channel about coding because I'm a programmer. Funny story: somebody complained about something, they're like all these YouTubers, blah 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 blah, and I was like, it's funny. Like in my comment, I answered like, it's funny that you think like I'm a YouTuber. I'm like a software engineer. I just happen to do YouTube for fun because that's not what I get paid to do. But it's funny how on YouTube, when you're under deliver on your content, people will complain and let you know what you should have done better because all of us YouTubers are making $1 million, right? The billion dollars on our YouTube channels.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, it's actually I don't understand. This is a decent medium where again you can I judge people based on the content they provide, not on subscribers or whatever.
yeah,
And I think there's nothing wrong with if like having a YouTube channel where you just want to pass whatever that is, soft skills, whether that is you
yeah,
enjoy, let's say, doing the I don't know, some kind of tutorial videos, whatever. Who's to say that that's is just something that I enjoy doing? And again, there we could have a discussion about what is the content that I like or dislike, but I'm not gonna sit here and say this is bad or that is bad. That's totally whoever to choose, and going around and complaining about that and is kind of nonsense. And I also can say one thing where I was getting like when you're in the beginning, you always get the most slack. That's one thing that I have to say. Like you
yeah.
always, and it's weird. It's not because if you even looking back, maybe it's not the content, but it's just a reality of how things basically work. Now, before I forget, I want to mention something that we have our usual crew. So we have Tammy. Nice to see you, Tammy. Hopefully, you'll be able to resolve the computer issue and everything. So we have Jake, and we definitely have Alex. And I want to make a massive shout out to Alex. It was an awesome episode when we did all three of us together. This is again one of those things where every time when somebody asks me now in courses, whatever, some like, first of all, any soft
A great
question.
channel, by the way. A great channel. Great live stream with
Yeah,
Alex. I really enjoyed it.
because
It
that
was
one was
fantastic.
literally like, how do you go from
Yeah, yeah,
start to getting hired? It was just like all the points. And in
yeah.
general, now every time
He
somebody
was
asks me,
prepared, unlike some of
yeah,
us.
yes, yeah,
It
he
was like
came in with all
he
the
did a really
notes
good
and
job.
everything.
Yeah, he was really good, really good.
and
Yeah,
and and that's definitely like, I'm anytime somebody asks me some kind of like, again, I'm gonna call them soft questions or whatever, where it's more not related to actual coding, but it's like, well, how do you study, how you do this is why we're doing the live stream. So I always say, look, you need to go and just check out this live stream, because I don't want to repeat myself. We already covered all of those things here. And second, if there's somebody asking about like how to start and get a job, I definitely point them to that live stream, because that, I think that was really cool that we kind of literally hit all the kind of points that I always wanted. And yeah, so thank you, Alex. Thank you for answering all the questions as always, and just doing the all the hard work behind the scenes. And then we
yeah.
have one more question regarding JS and React. What do you consider when choosing the right tool for an app? Example, after building some of the same projects using one of them in your courses, which would you really pick? I mean, reality, I guess I would go with Next.js, if that's the most straightforward answer. Just because, I mean, I don't really see the point of uh, using, let's say, vanilla JS or create React app,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
if
yeah, yeah.
Next.js can do all those things behind the scenes, I mean, again, if we're talking about Hello World app, I mean, no. But if it's a, let's say,
Production.
yeah,
So
production level application, unless it's again some kind of situation, maybe you don't need the SEO. Maybe like, okay, you can do it with Create React. I'm not saying that it's dead or nothing like that, but if I need to set up the application that's gonna go production, and I'm expecting the best quality and everything, I definitely would right away go for Next.js. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I definitely 100% agree with you. And in the both past companies, we did not use Next.js, we used React, but it's because we were building like dashboard applications, which don't need any SEO or any of that benefits that you could get with Next.js much easier. But if you're learning, definitely JavaScript, React, and then Next.js. I think that's a good path for people
For
um,
me, for me, it's
to do.
definitely what I've noticed. I mean, I understand the movement to kind of push everything towards vanilla. I mean, not everyone, but there is certain people who just prefer vanilla and everything, and all of that is nice. But even in their comments, blog posts, whatever, like what comes out at the end of the day, they're like, yeah, well, I mean, if it's a bigger application, then it makes sense to use the framework. So for me, I mean, if you're doing the counter, I mean, probably you wouldn't use the whatever React or Next.js. But if you're doing something serious, then for sure you need to start with React, because again, we already have talked about like the
Yeah,
state management and all that.
yeah, Ahmed Aza asked, "What's the point of using GraphQL on a MERN project?" And like, I think it really depends what you're trying to achieve, because doing application with REST API is perfectly fine. Uh, you know, but the GraphQL, what I like GraphQL is because you could prevent overfetching or underfetching, because you're able to get the data that you want. And also another benefit of GraphQL versus REST is you could have one API that powers multiple applications, and you're only getting the data that you ask for. So you could have your website, you could have a phone like app that accommodates your application, that doesn't need all the data but some of the data, and you could uh, use GraphQL. But one issue I have with GraphQL, for instance, if you're creating a backend with GraphQL, there's a lot more boilerplate code that you have to write than if you just use regular Node Express with MERN or Postgres or what have you. So from backend standpoint, it's easier to build just like a regular REST API backend. And I love GraphQL, but yeah, it's a pain in the butt in the back end.
Okay, we're like what 1:14 in. I think
Oh,
we'll
damn, damn,
we'll
past
call
my
it a
bedtime.
day.
Past my bedtime. That's it.
We'll call it a day. It was nice to see everybody. It was definitely nice to see Paul. And we're again, like I said in the beginning, we're all really happy that everything worked out and you're
Yeah,
doing
thank you.
well and
Yeah,
everybody's doing well in your family
yep,
and
healthy,
everything. So
healthy. Yep.
so all is awesome. Hopefully, we're just gonna have smooth sailing as far as COVID in these neck of the woods. So, yeah, thank you everyone for watching, for listening, and do you have last words?
Just thank you for all of you guys who come in and chat with us. Like, I really enjoyed the conversations with obviously with John and you guys here, because it literally like a bunch of developers just hang out in one room and chatting, and I really like that. And you know, like what I like about it is that we don't have any hidden agenda, and we just talk about the things that we like and think things are going to be
Yep.
interesting to us. Like I said, like regardless, like if people are here or not, I just like my time with John where you can talk about stuff,
Yep.
and you guys, of course, all of you guys, because you got to have some fun. Uh, so that's good. Thank you all. Thank you, John, and everybody. Have a great weekend, and um, take care.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.